Hi, wow, we're on lesson 100. Can you believe it? We've gone through 100 lessons this year so far. Boy, you guys really have learned a lot, haven't you? I hope so. But anyway, as we start this lesson, I was reading my Bible, a scripture, and in my Bible I had a little thing written above a scripture when I was reading in the one-year Bible. It's in Joshua 24:15. But the little thing I wrote in there was a note that said, the quest of humanity is not to find freedom, but to find the right master, because you will be mastered by someone. You know, we're going to serve somebody. Somebody is what it's saying. In Joshua 24:15, Joshua was addressing the children of Israel who had gone astray many times, we know. And he says, now therefore, fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt. Serve the Lord, and if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I love that because it kind of reminded me of the people in the chapter that we're going to go through this in lesson 100. We're going to be studying Southeast Asia. And this area had many languages and many peoples. And they went from many different religions, many gods. And this land was controlled by many lands. Again and again, they would get new leaders, new masters that ruled them, and they'd say, well, wonder who's going to be ruling us today, basically. And this was the people that lived in the Indo-Chinese peninsula and the islands there. The large group of islands, our largest group of islands in the world, 17,000 islands of Indonesia, and 7,000 islands in the Philippines. And Indonesia had the third largest island in the world called Borneo. So the modern countries now, when we think of that area, we'll think of Thailand. I've been to Thailand. And Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Burma, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, few other ones there, quite a few other ones. The first peoples there were Thai, Khmer, Viet or Vietnamese, Burmese. They all lived in that area. The religion, lots of religions, but it started off with a basic religion of animism or animism. That means they believed in like good and bad spirits, and they wore charms, and they did rituals, and they honored spirits of the dead, and they'd guard against these different charms against evil spirits, and they tried to appease their gods with sacrifices, and they worshiped sometimes their deceased ancestors. It's kind of, you know, all kind of similar way back when. Kind of, you would say that they were pretty paganistic. Well, the buildings that they lived in were bamboo, you know, because they had a lot of bamboo to work with above the ground, usually with stilts, because there were a lot of marshes and a lot of different areas here. They made bronze statues and gongs and drums out of bronze, especially in Vietnam. The main occupation was growing rice. We know that. And basically one lord of all would own all of the lands, and the people would farm it to support themselves from the land. There might be some fishermen, especially on the coast areas, of course, and they lived in small villages, usually in small villages. They practiced slavery, especially with peoples that they captured, and they fought each other often. The Mekong River was the biggest river there, 2,703 miles long, starting in Tibet all the way to Vietnam. And they had the raining seasons that would come in. And during these rainy seasons, the river would get huge and a lot of different flooding of this area. Those are some of the geographical things. The past empires, well, first of all, there were many. They spoke many languages, and they were no one kingdom. They had all these different little kingdoms. The Khmer people of Cambodia were in the 1800s, and they were the largest, most powerful in that area. They built Angkor, the capital city, and they had complex moats and canals and reservoirs, and they had lots of water. These reservoirs would supply water for their rice crops. Their main crop would be rice. The population was humongous. In that time, London would have 25,000 people. Everybody thought London was a huge town and a huge city in Europe. But they would have 1 million people living in this area. Quite huge amount of people. The Lao people were part of the Khmer, and they lived in the part of what's now called Laos. In 500 BC, they found these strange carved stone jars and ashes, and they were filled with ashes of the dead people. They called it the Plain of Jars. So that's how they buried their people, we know. In Champa people, they ruled Central and South Vietnam. And then we go on to a few other empires that tried to take over. We have the Funan Kingdom in 100 AD. We have the raiders from India that came in 1025. We have Zheng He visiting in the 1400s. Remember Zheng He, from China? They had a lot of Chinese influence. The Chinese invaders started with the Han Dynasty that took control of Vietnam in 100 AD, and they finally overthrew China in 939 AD. In 1407, the Chinese again controlled them, and they went back and forth through this era, especially Vietnam. In Vietnam, two families arose. We see those, the Nguyen family in the south and the Trinh family in the north. They still have North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Can you imagine that? Chinese came in and taught farming, art, philosophy. They had a lot of Chinese beliefs, the Confucian beliefs. Then the Mongols came in, the dynasty, and conquered the cities, some of the cities. India came in with its merchants in 20 AD to 1200 AD. We find signs of art, the art of India in there. Hindu and Buddhist religions came in. Southeast Asia had Hinduism, but it never did take on the caste system as they have in India. That's a good thing. So as we go here, there's so much different influence. That's why they call it Indochina, because India and China influenced. My husband one day, we were eating in a Thai restaurant, and he said, "How come Thai restaurants it's different from India and different from China?" I said, "Does it seem like it's a little bit of a combination between India and China? Like they take the good spices from India and the good spices of China and mix them together, and you get Thai food." I like Thai food. But in this area, they built the areas of temples and stupas and pagodas. They were all had to do with the Buddhist religion now, as that became dominant during a certain time in some of these countries. They also they built huge buildings to the god, the Vishu, the Hindu god. In a temple they built in Angkor Wat, this huge temple. It took 40 years to build. It was the largest religious building in the world. They built several temples, and they also used them as observatories. Stupas are large, tall structures. They're like for Buddhist meditation. And the pagodas are multi-towers that get smaller from the top. These two all have to do with Buddhism. So let's take a break here, and we'll go on in just a minute.